What are your main takeaways from Thursday?
Oh, the principal takeaway is that the Conservative Party is still in very substantial electoral trouble, just as much trouble as we thought it was in before Thursday. But at the same time, it's raised some questions about the strategy that Sir Keir Starmer is pursuing and how robust that strategy is in the face of some Tory fire of the kind that the party can certainly expect to get between now and election day. Meanwhile, as far as the Liberal Democrats are concerned, well, yes, another spectacular by-election success, but it's becoming a party of isolated kingdoms because none of these spectacular by-election successes are being accompanied by any significant revival in the party's broader opinion poll rating. By the way, just to go back to the Conservatives, just to substantiate what I said, even if we include, as I think we should, Uxbridge in the calculation, if we take the three by-elections and calculate the extent to which the Conservative share of the vote has gone down, on average across those three by-elections, the Conservatives have experienced a 21-point drop in their share of the vote. That is very similar to the 18-point fall in the Conservative share of the vote since 2019 that is currently being registered by the opinion polls. So take the whole set as one piece, and there is nothing in these results to suggest that what the opinion polls are telling us about the difficulties that the Conservatives face is in any way a serious misrepresentation of the current political position.
So is it your estimation, looking at where things are, and of course these by-elections are always interesting because they sort of stress test the opinion polls. I mean, obviously they are by-elections, they're not a general election. But does it look like Keir Starmer has the possibility of being on track for a decent Labour, a working majority at the next general election?
Yes, I mean, the reason why these by-elections are of particular interest is that they were the first by-elections to take place in Conservative-held seats since the Liz Truss debacle, since the Labour Party, in the wake of that, began to get double-digit leads, and therefore the opinion polls for the first time in this Parliament giving Labour the kind of lead that might be sufficient to give them an overall majority. And ever since last October, it has looked possible that the Labour Party might win the general election. It still looks possible that the Labour Party might win the next general election. But of course, there is no guarantee that it will. It's probably 15 months or so to the next general election. And plenty can happen in that time. But and by-elections, I mean, I can quote you historical precedent about how these results are redolent of what happened before the 1997 general election. But at the end of the day, by-elections predict nothing, but they do provide us evidence as to whether or not what the opinion polls are telling us is indeed being corroborated. And basically, the broad answer is that, yes, it is. Labour are therefore well ahead. But the question is, will they still be well ahead in 50 months' time?
Well, let's explore the future now, because we're very much pitch rolling towards the general election. And we see this morning the Times reporting that reflecting on the results and reflecting particularly on the ULEZ referendum, which is effectively sort of what kind of Uxbridge became, Rishi Sunak has a strategic idea, which is to really lean into some of these wedge issues, these culture war issues, whether it's small boats, whether it's transgender issues, whether even it's sort of net zero issues. Do you think that could do some work for the Conservative Party? Particularly, I've just been speaking to somebody about the Spanish elections, which are coming up tomorrow, where the far right is actually doing quite well because they're really focusing on these values issues, these culture war issues. Even though somebody like me might not like that strategy, could it have purchase for the Conservatives?
Well, one of the fundamental problems facing the Conservative Party is that the coalition of Leave voters that Boris Johnson assembled in 2019 has basically, the foundations of all of that have just cracked and seriously fractured. So to give you some idea, back in December 2019, around 3/4 of those people who had voted Leave in 2016 voted for the Conservative Party. In recent opinion polls, the equivalent figure is about 40%. Indeed, basically all of the Tory losses since 2019, they're virtually entirely occurring amongst Leave voters, because the people who voted Remain in 2016, who were still willing to vote for Boris Johnson in 2019, were basically very loyal Conservatives. They've remained loyal throughout this parliament. They got slightly nervous at the height of the Liz Truss debacle, but basically they've remained loyal to the Conservatives. Now, one of the things that we do know is that Leave voters are rather more socially conservative on these so-called culture war issues. That includes transgender. It also includes things like, do we have pride in the empire, or do we question it? To what extent are we happy living in a diverse society? And yes, it's also related to immigration. So insofar as the Conservatives need to get an awful lot of Leave voters back, you can see why you might think that focusing on cultural war issues might help to get them back. However, a few things to bear in mind. If we construct the narrative as to why the Conservative Party has ended up where it is, we don't have to mention either Brexit, actually, or cultural war issues. The two things that we have to mention are, one, the ethics of the party, and particularly the ethics of Boris Johnson, and two, the Liz Truss debacle, in the wake of which the public have come to doubt the Conservative Party's ability to run the economy effectively. And of course, the economy is in a very difficult situation, as indeed are the UK's fiscal finances. And I think the Conservative Party needs to be aware that it's going to be very difficult for it to make serious progress in the polls unless it addresses these two issues.